Yesterday afternoon, the Federal Reserve announced a rate cut for the first time in a long time. Now, what does that rate cut have to do and how does it translate to mortgage interest rates? Hi, I'm Chris Henwood from North Point Bank and welcome to the Henwood Edge. So, yesterday afternoon, Fed Reserve Chairman Powell made an announcement that they're going to cut rates by 1/4 point. In the afternoon yesterday, my phone blew up with questions from clients, from realtors, Jen Romero, talking about you, and other people who were interested to see what my take on the rate cut was, why the market was so volatile, and what that meant for interest rates moving forward. So let's just jump right in. Let's jump right in and let's talk about the mortgage interest rate relationship to the Fed rate cut. So a rate cut by the Fed does not equal a mortgage rate drop. And by that I mean that because they drop it 1/4 point on the Fed, doesn't mean that mortgage interest rates drop 1/4 point. Now, as you watch the news, you may get that impression because the talking heads will all say, oh, rate cut, mortgage rates are going lower. While that is probably true in the longer term, it's not a one-to-one correlation and it doesn't directly relate. So it can be confusing, it can be misleading, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this program today, to kind of shed a little light on what exactly is said and how it relates to people who are in the market for mortgages or buying homes. So right here we have a picture of Fed Chairman Powell, and he's the one who made the announcement. And what did Chairman Powell actually say yesterday? What he said was the Federal Reserve was going to cut rates by 1/4 percentage point. That is the rate at which they lend to the banks and other financial institutions. It's not the rate that we as consumers will see in our credit card bills, in our mortgages. It's the rate at which they lend to other banks. Now, the most confusing and kind of difficult part of what Chairman Powell said yesterday was he did not rule out or commit to further rate cuts. So what does that mean? It means that, well, we may raise rates, we may not raise rates. We may cut rates, we may not cut rates. Basically, it injected a lot of confusion into the marketplace. So in a previous life, I was a trader on the floor of the New York Mercantile Exchange, and oftentimes clerks were charged with telling people up in offices and other ends of the phone as to what's happening, and you try to give a description of the marketplace. And one of the common mistakes of a rookie clerk is they'll say, well, if the market looks like it's going higher, but if it doesn't go higher, it's going to go lower, which kind of is like saying the sun's going to rise every day and set every day. It's kind of basically a very confusing statement that doesn't say a whole lot of anything, which is why in the wake of the announcement, the stock market went crazy. It went down, it went up, it went down again. And the bond market, it went up, it went down. It just was kind of confusing because the market looks to these sorts of announcements for guidance and an indication of what's moving forward. So also a very common statement that we used to make on the floor and kind of as an axiom among traders is buy the rumor, sell the fact. Now what does that mean? Let's take, for example, this rate cut. In the marketplace, it had been signaled by the Fed through different various comments made by various Fed governors around the country that there was a very favorable view to cutting rates for the first time in quite a long time. And that had been signaled to the marketplace and the general public as a whole. Now, they didn't actually announce it until yesterday, but the general prevailing feeling was that there was going to be a rate cut coming, and it was probably going to be 1/4 point. So the markets, which are great indicators of what's going to happen, reacted in kind. And because the market moved in a favorable direction, bond prices were a little bit higher, which means yields are lower, which means interest rates are lower. They had already baked in the fact that this 1/4 point was going to come. So when the announcement was made, the market reacted, but it reacted more on Chairman Powell's, in my opinion, his statement of, well, we may cut rates in the future, but we're not committed to future rate cuts, even though, again, the prevailing feeling in the marketplace is there will be further rate cuts in before the end of this year. So it's kind of that uncertainty directly translated into volatility in the stock market yesterday. So how does this affect all of us? Well, I think in the long run, interest rates over the next, let's say, long run, by long run I mean in the next 6 months, interest rates are going to remain steady to moving a little bit lower. I don't see that they're going to fall out of bed. I think we're going to kind of grind lower, maybe another quarter point if things get crazy, maybe a half of a percentage point in interest rates from where they are now, but I don't see it really going nuts. But as always, there's no such thing, as we say here in the Henwood Edge, as a one-size-fits-all mortgage, and this even applies in this case where the Fed rate cut affects everyone a little bit differently, whether you've already got a mortgage and rates are going lower, or you're waiting to buy a house. This might be the time now to really, if you're rate sensitive and you really want to try to time the market, I would really ramp up my home search, because rates are going to be dipping as we move into the kind of next few months, and I don't think they're going to stay there for very long. I think they'll probably start to move back up from there. But as always, you can always give me a phone call, text me. My other contact information will appear at the end of this video. And, as always, reach out to me with comments, questions. Please send me your ideas for future shows you'd like to have covered. And as always, thanks for watching the Henwood Edge.
This is not a commitment to lend. All loans are subject to credit review and approval. Not all loan programs are available in all states. Contact a North Point Bank loan officer for further details.